We're in good shape. And now we're doing well. Now we have to get what we have to get. If we don't do that, we'll have to go a big step further. But with that being said, they want to make a deal. We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours, and it's very possible that we'll make a deal.
The U.S. is awaiting Iran's response to its latest peace proposal, and President Trump is optimistic the two sides are close to a deal to end the conflict. Markets are cheering the progress, with all major indices up this week, and you see oil trying to get back to $90 a barrel. Welcome back to the second hour of the Big Money Show. I'm Taylor Riggs, along with my captivating co-hosts, and with us for the hour, Fox News contributor Liz Peek. Great to have you as always.
Thanks for having me.
So mediators are pushing to restart talks in Pakistan next week. The president says Iran has already agreed to abandon its nuclear weapons program, and America will extract uranium from the country. The U.S. is still starving the regime of oil export revenue through a blockade of Iranian ports. So Trump is warning Tehran, strike a deal with America, or bombing will resume at, quote, a much higher intensity than before. Liz, I don't want to be too negative, but let me just pose this to you, and then you tell me where you stand. Are we getting confused with they're obliterated, but we still have to do an economic blockade because they still have a threat, and there's a deal, but if they're obliterated, why don't we have a deal yet? We don't know who's negotiating. Is there sort of any whiplash for you in this, or is this still a positive for you?
Look, I think the biggest thing that's going on with Iran is the economic blockade. That is what's driving Iran to the negotiating table. That is what I am optimistic will result in a deal. I don't think that the bombing, the taking out of the Navy, all the assassinations of top leaders, et cetera, have gotten us to that point. I mean, let's face it, the top IRGC guy is still running the show, apparently. He is still completely adamant, has been until very recently, that they would not abandon their nuclear ambitions. The only thing that's really changed is that there are scarcity of fuel and food and bread and things that Iranians cannot do without. So I do think that the economic blockade is crippling this regime, and I think they know it, and they're going to have to make some progress on this peace deal. Right now, the most recent news is that they want to establish some sort of agency to oversee and tax passage through the Strait. That doesn't sound like a total give up to me. That sounds like resistance. But look, why does Trump keep talking about more bombing, smashing everything up, et cetera, as you say? Because at the end of the day, we do have that. We do have that capability. They know it. We don't want to use it, because then rebuilding Iran becomes a Herculean task that will engage the entire Middle East, and it's going to be a very, very difficult thing to do, just like it is in Gaza. I mean, it's a huge problem. So I am optimistic that this is going to end. Is it going to end today, tomorrow, next week? I don't know.
I'm not even sure, and this was sort of posed, Jackie, I think you last hour were, or maybe it was Brian, if it's the markets that are rallying on a peace deal, and I would say no. I don't think it's the market's looking at earnings. I don't think the market is thinking, or oil for that matter, we're going to have a deal in Pakistan next weekend, because we also don't trust these people, and I don't know what a deal looks like. How do you read that?
I agree with you. I think the market is rallying on fundamentals, but it needed that little push from this uncertainty to be taken off the table to really be able to go. And I think I've said this from the beginning, even at periods of this negotiation where I didn't really understand what was happening, and I would sit back and think about what I was seeing and say, I don't get it, but I know I don't have all the pieces. I don't have all the information they have, and you have to just trust the process. You have to have faith in the president and his negotiating team to be able to handle it the right way, handle it in the fastest manner possible. And I think this is a market that has that trust and confidence, because this is a president that has come into office, and everything that he said he was going to do so far, he has done it. So you trust and look at people based on the actions, not what they say they're going to do, but if they follow through with them. And I think that there is an element of this in what we're seeing, which I think is rare, because I've said this before as well, that markets typically don't take that push or turn higher or assume the uncertainty is gone until it is truly, truly gone. I can't remember a scenario like this since I've been covering Wall Street where markets have had such confidence in one person's ability to be able to negotiate an eventual outcome.
Brian, I do not like a tax or a toll on anything coming in or out of the Strait because it sets up precedent that A, it's money for them, but also if this is truly international waters, one country shouldn't have to get to decide that they're charging a toll on every global product.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Is that more Iran or more us, though? I mean, that sounds like Iran's idea.
For sure.
Right, that's not our idea.
We haven't
for the
agreed to
Strait.
it. They're just proposing that, but it seems like an odd thing to throw in the middle of the
Well,
negotiations.
I mean, I suppose they want to have their chips on the table, too. It'd be a bad idea. By the way, I think it would actually be a backfire for them. If they did one of these tolls through the Strait, every country would be like, let's find a way to get around the Strait, which I think they're going to do anyway. So I think that's a good thing going for us. But that would be a bad idea. I've been as hawkish on Iran, I think, as anybody at this table, okay? So, but I look at what they're trying to negotiate here, and I understand the president is trying to stay between two ditches, okay? One ditch is you don't do enough to stop the Iran threat. Okay, you give up too soon. The other ditch is you go way too far, and you get embroiled in a thing that we don't want to see again in Iraq, Afghanistan kind of thing. So he's trying to stay between these two, which means you do just enough to get just what you need. And I think that's what the negotiation's about. He's trying to get what we need. The hard truth about all this, let's say we get a deal, okay, and it has inspections, and it has verified handover of uranium and all these things. That's good. It all depends on enforcement. But at the end of the day, President Trump cannot control that forever. This whole thing is always going to be contingent on what the next guy and the next guy and the next guy does. It is like statecraft and foreign policy by definition is a never-ending story. It has to be. So I think President Trump is trying to get something that is good for a foreseeable period of time. But I think all of America has to understand, if you take the Iran threat seriously, and I do, I think the way the administration articulated conventional weapons, hiding nuclear weapons, is a big threat. If you take that seriously, every administration in our lifetime is going to have to deal with that. It's not just going to be Trump. So we should probably buckle in, because this is a project we'll have, if we care about national security, for a very long time.
Well, and that's why, as I was saying at the top of the show, I think this market will change its mind 5 different times on whether this is done or not done, or we're happy with it or we're not happy with it. Sell off, rally, sell off. We see that all the time. But at the end of the day, let me tell you what gave me confidence this week. Marco Rubio. Was that not a great performance by Rubio this week? And he continues. That really makes me feel good about what's happening. At the end of the day, I have more questions about this than I have answers. One of the questions is, are we going to hear from the Iranian people? I don't know. Will we hear from them? When might we hear from them? Could they have the deciding vote, in other words? That's all I have.
Well, they have. If there are snap elections demanded by this peace process, which I think is very positive, then Trump's promise that help is on the way, that would actually be delivered. I mean, to your point, Jackie, he does follow through, and I don't think they've forgotten that the Iranian people are the victims here first and foremost.
And he kind of promised that early on.
Absolutely.
And he's hinted at it as we move forward. I'm hearing you say that actually makes me feel really good, because I haven't seen that idea of a snap election anywhere else. And so I'm like, I hope that's out there. I hope that's something they're thinking about.
Liz, what do you tell people who come to me and they say, I voted for America first. I didn't vote for another war, and I voted for gas under 3 or a 2 handle. I've sat here at this table and said, this is America first if my daughter can grow up with a nuclear-free Iran. But if it's like a 15-year deal, and then the next administration is kind of soft on Iran, and then they get nuclear weapons, then all of this feels like it wasn't America first. So what do you tell those people?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think making America safe is America first, and I do think that's the ultimate goal here. the one thing that has been achieved, and I don't think anybody can really dispute this, is we now have allies across the Middle East that we didn't have before. I mean, it isn't just Israel, it isn't just Israel and UAE, it's all the Gulf states now understand, and they knew before, by the way, that Iran was an existential threat, not just to Israel, but also to them. Look what they've done, what Iran has done to the UAE and to the Saudis and some of these other countries. I mean, they've been merciless. So I think now, going forward, we have a realignment of allies, and that is incredibly important, not just for energy, which Trump managed much better than Joe Biden did in terms of his relationship with the Saudis and the ability to help control oil flows out of the Middle East, but now on a whole host of issues. So I'd say that is something that's very good for America and is America first.
There have been all kinds of knock-on benefits that are positive. I read today that Europeans are setting aside some of the penalties in their green policies and laws. So they're setting those aside, saying it's not important. We've got to get the energy that we need right now and not worry about these issues.
Just like Kathy Hochul.
Norway.
Right? Norway. What do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can talk a little bit about that. I'm going to use that to jump into Tesla because this is a fun one. Here's some interesting news. China-made EVs and Tesla out of their Shanghai factory are up 36% year over year, you guys, for a 6th straight month in a row, mostly the Model 3s and the Model Ys. But China also saw some recovery in Europe. Sweden, France, and Denmark, who were saying rising fuel prices are making them want to go back to EVs. I was taking a look. I think in the Netherlands, gas is like $10 a gallon over there. So yeah, when you don't participate in this and you allow yourself to be dependent on climate change or oil from the Gulf region, that's what happens. Anyways, for now, it looks like Tesla is back in vogue, and Brian is smirking.
Well, I just think if you lived in the Netherlands and your government, number one, impoverished you with their energy policy, and then number two, made you dependent on Chinese vehicles, which everybody who talks about those vehicles.
Well, they're trying to make. They're Teslas, but they're made in Shanghai.
Oh, I thought you said Chinese brands were going in.
No, I'm sorry. China-made Teslas.
Okay, well, then only one part of my critique stands.
That's
the part that they impoverish you and make you buy expensive cars.
But by the way, Chinese electric vehicles have flooded Europe. So, I mean, you're not totally wrong, Brian. That is a big
But that's
threat.
what my second part is those things are spy machines. They are spy balloons on wheels. Everybody looks at this. So that's what you're getting. You don't have any money and you have spy machines that you ride around in.
Right.
That's Europe.
I like that.
Coming up, data centers are pushing up power bills across the country, but now Florida is taking action. We have the details for you next.